John Manning from Dewings, and I'm going to demonstrate for you the financial model that we've co-developed with ODMA for optometrists in independent practice. Now, the great thing about financial modelling generally for any business is that it allows you to analyse very closely the way in which the various financial components of your business work together to achieve the end result. So you can look at things like, how much money am I making and where's that money coming from? What if I want to try some new initiative? Can I afford to do it? What happens if I lose a key staff member, or if I want to buy a critical new piece of equipment? Later on, of course, in the life of a business, you can use it to look at things like planning for succession and retirement. Now, for an optometrist, there are some very unique costs and circumstances associated with running an optometry practice, and so this model takes those into account. The sample data that we're going to be using for this demonstration is taken from a real-life startup. The model itself can be used for any stage of independent practice, which means it doesn't have to just be for startups. It can also be used by an established practice. But because we're looking at a startup today, that means that these initial costs that we're looking at up the top here really are the kinds of costs that you're going to need to incur to set up a new practice. So you're going to need to buy some new equipment, for example. You're going to need a shop fit out probably. You're certainly going to need some IT hardware and software, and you're also going to need to buy some initial stock, some frames, sunglasses and lenses. And really these are the costs that are going to flow through to your bottom line through things like depreciation, interest, cost of goods sold. If you're an established practice using this model, the kinds of costs that you're going to put up here, or the values that you're going to put here, are really the value of your existing equipment, how much finance you currently have, what's the value of your current stock on hand, and so on. But the real power of the model is down here in the income and expenses area. And what we want to do is you want to look at your income in much more detail than just simply how much am I going to make for a year in total. And so what we've done is we've assumed that there are 320 trading days in a year. Now that can be adjusted here if you'd like to do that. For the optometrist that we're using as the example, he felt that in his first year of operations he could see, give or take, around about 4 patients on average per day. Now you might think that's a little optimistic, and that's okay. That's exactly what the model is designed to do, for you to put your numbers in here and to see what works for you. Based on an average income from eye tests of $35 per consultation, we get around $44,800 a year from eye tests, which isn't a lot. So of course what you're going to need to do is to supplement that with sales of frames and lenses, and we've done that here by way of a conversion factor. So what this optometrist felt that he could do was that he reckoned he could convert around about 80% of his total consultations into sales of frames and lenses, and he also felt that he could convert around about 25% of those into sales of sunglasses as well. And so the effect of all of that is that we end up with a total gross income of $425,600. Below that, we factor in your cost of goods sold, which is really the cost of the stock that you're selling. And this is a variable cost. If you sell more stock, your cost of goods sold is going to go up. If you sell less, then it's going to go down. Below that, we've accounted for the various overheads and more fixed type costs associated with running a practice. So your rent, for example, doesn't increase or decrease based on the number of patients that you're able to see. And the same for things, for example, like your support salaries and so on. Now, in this model, we've taken into account a salary for the optometrist himself or herself. For this particular optometrist, we factored in a salary of around about $80,000. And what that means is that any profit that the model demonstrates is going to be a return to you above and beyond what you're already taking out of the practice as a salary. So if we take into account all of these numbers in this example, we end up with a profit of sort of $25,000 or so. And that increases year on year. There's a little dip here, and then it continues to increase after that as the practice sort of grows and becomes more established and is able to see more patients. But really the power of modelling comes with being able to take that now and to test certain scenarios. So say, for example, this practice wants to look at options for growth, and they want to do that in their 4th year of operations. So what they're going to do is take on another optometrist. So let's have a look in year 4 at the profit at the moment that we're making based on our projections. It's around about $176,000 or so. Now, if we take on another optometrist, let's say we pay them around about the same amount as yourself. Now, incidentally, the salaries are increasing here because we're factoring in CPI. We've done that for all of these costs, and the CPI factor can be adjusted in the model, so you don't have to use the same value that we've used here. But let's say we double our salaries. So it's $180,000 for 2 optometrists, including yourself. And in return for that, you're going to want to see more patients coming in the door. So let's take our 6 patients in year 4 and increase that conservatively to 8 patients. What sort of profit are we going to make by doing that? Well, it's increased from $176,000 to $246,000, and that continues to increase again year on year. But let's say you're fairly conservative and you're not sure, you're a little bit worried about the risk of doing this. Well, let's look at the worst case scenario. So we had a profit of $176,000. Let's say you're going to pay your new optometrist to come on board. But worst case scenario, you don't see any new patients coming in the door. So let's take this 8 down to 6. Are you able to still make a profit? It turns out in this model that you are. It's not as great as $176,000, and so of course if this continues, you're going to want to review the arrangements that you have with the optometrist, because it's obviously not all that viable. But what it tells you is that you can take a risk and still continue to make a profit based on the worst case scenario. But let's take that back up to 8. Let's be fairly positive and say that it's going to work out. This model is condensed down into a period of 10 years. So let's take another scenario. Let's assume that all those startup costs are actually existing capital costs. And let's say this is a practice that's sort of a little bit, it's been established for quite some time. And the optometrist who works here is starting to think about retirement and so on. They don't want to retire just yet, but they want to reduce the time that they're spending in the practice. They want to perhaps spend some more time on the golf course or traveling or whatever. So let's have a look at the salaries in year 8. At the moment, it's around about $220,000. So let's drop that down to $165,000. And that figure, give or take, is around about the value of one full-time optometrist and your own salary at around about 50% of the time. Now that may result in a few less patients coming in the door, or the fact that the practice can actually only accommodate a certain number of patients per day. So let's drop that down to 7 patients. What's going to be the effect on the bottom line? Well, you're going to be able to continue to make a profit, and you continue to do that for the next couple of years as well. You can also factor in additional superannuation here as well. Let's say you want to improve your nest egg because you're getting close to wanting to start to draw on your superannuation. So let's put away an extra $5,000 a year. And again, you can continue to make a profit over and above the salary that you're taking from the practice, and that continues for the foreseeable future. So the great thing about financial modelling is you can run almost any financial scenario through the model. You might want to test break-even points or the effect of discounting and so forth. We want to run one more scenario through the model, and that is the possibility that you might want to, as a startup, look at going with a franchise rather than operating independently. Now, if you go with a franchise, that's effectively a discount on the total income that you're going to bring in, because most franchises work on taking a percentage of your total revenue. So we've factored in an area in the model here for looking at the effect of discounts, and so we can use that also to look at the effect that a franchise fee will have on your bottom line. So let's say that franchise fee is around about 18%. And again, we're showing that as a discount because effectively any revenue that you're able to bring in from operating is going to be reduced by about 18% because of the value of that franchise fee. Let's scroll down and see the effect that has on the bottom line. You can see that in the first year of operations, it actually gives you a fairly considerable loss. Things don't really start to improve until year 4, when you've taken on that second optometrist and the practice is able to continue to grow because of that. Now, of course, if you do go with a franchise, the hope is that you're going to be able to leverage their marketing and buying power and so on to fast track the growth of your practice. And that could certainly happen. Again, the model is able to tell you, you're able to factor that into the model by perhaps improving the number of patients that come in through the door or whatever. But what it allows you to do is to test based on your particular circumstances if that's going to be a viable option or not. So, that's the model. The good news is that if you are an optometrist, either in independent practice or considering independent practice, ODMA and Dewings have agreed to make this model available to you completely free of charge. All that we ask is that you have an initial, no obligation, free consultation with us here at Dewings just to show you how to use the model, how to extract the best value from it, and to run your numbers through it. We're going to be putting up some contact details at the end of this presentation, so if you'd like to talk with us further, please have a look at those and give us a call. We're looking forward to hearing from you.